All right, so good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, and welcome to the Saturday program for the Uroboros Festival. I'm very happy that you are all here, and I would like to start with just few words of gratitude to our sponsors, because the festival has been supported with funds provided by the Abacus Foundation, the Slovak Arts Council, and the City of Prague. So our wholehearted gratitude goes to them. Also, I would like to remind you that you are very welcome to use our Discord channel for the discussion. I'm gonna post the link. I can't believe I'm still not totally ready when I post the link of the Discord after so many days of festival, but here is the link. Please feel free to keep on the conversation going in this channel as it survives Zoom, and you're also very welcome to use Zoom if you feel like to post your questions or comments, etc. So this event that we are together in today is part of the track of Sense Gambits, the track that with works that untake things for granted and in a very Euroborian fashion questions the sense of essence and the essence of sense. Now, with us today are Agapetos Faleava, Lantan Ha, Napatsamon Jampivan, Natasha Narain, and Kavita Gonsalves, and they are going to present us their work, TransHuman Saunter, which is a geolocative artwork that documents the entanglements of 4 women artists with the Indian Banyan tree. With this, please join me in welcoming the artist today. The floor is yours.
ปลูกต้นไม้ปลูกชีวิตแล้วปลูกต้นไม้ปลูกชีวิตแล้วปลูกต้นไม้ปลูกชีวิตแล้ว
The TransHuman Saunter is a portal to our connections to the Indian banyan tree. The best way to enter this portal is through the Brisbane City Botanical Garden, but today we do it in great company during Uroboros Festival. The life of the banyan tree spans over 100 years, and we, humans, share only a small fraction of it today. We begin our entry into this portal by acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge the Turrbal and Yagara people as the traditional custodians of the land in which our work was created. We acknowledge all people of the land who make this work possible. We recognize the continuous connections to land, waters, and communities of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people.
We pay our respect to elders, past, present, and emerging, and commit with our First Nation people. We extend our acknowledgement to traditional owner of the land which you are zooming from. This project is dedicated to our beloved waterfield.
This is a geomap of our TransHuman Saunter project, and today you get to experience my work, and tomorrow you get to experience Natasha and Lan's work. The Brisbane City Botanical Garden is the perfect background for our work. It has history and culture embedded in every nooks and crooks of the old city. But it is dark with history of racism, humiliation, colonization, discrimination, and climate change. But it also has a sense of belonging through
prayer, rituals, respect, hope, and spiritual journey. So about us, we are both artists in this project. My name is Napatsamon. You can call me Ib. I'm a PhD student at QUT Creative Industry, and I'm a Thai experience designer. I grew up in Thailand and lived most of my entire life in Thailand. Thainess rules my life with the integrations of scientific knowledge and cultural belief, including the conceptual design in this project. The Great Banyan tree is a symbol of the complexity in the religion and spiritual belief entanglement among Thai people. It makes us curious, confused, scared, powerful, considerate, and spiritual. It's full of faith, philosophy, and sometimes it can be called as superstition. If you have a chance to come to visit Thailand, it's easy to see a giant banyan tree with a sacred chimes and sometimes colorful cloth wrapped around them. Some Thais hold a tree ordinations, establish a shrine for a guardian spirit to forbid cutting trees. So today I would like to introduce you to the entanglement of some interesting insight that taught me how to pay respect to the Mother Nature in my Thai cultural belief and Buddhist approach. In Thailand, the magical religious belief willingly presents itself from the sake of the tree to sustain the trees as a balance of this world. And I would like to introduce my artist friend, Agapitos, to her work.
Using the botanical garden as the landscape of our works, I created audios and film to weave my story of tattoos, past, present, and future to reveal my vulnerability. I have used the banyan tree as my strength, resilience that empowers me to embrace my shortcomings. I am a Kapetos, and I am a Samoan woman. I was born into a family that is poor, but rich in family values, respect, humility, and honor. A family that is poor in glory, but rich in ancient culture and history. Poor in fame, but rich in stories about sacred tattoos, legendary stories of ancestors fighting against colonizers and oppressors. Poor in materialistic things, but rich in providing for family through land and sea. Not having enough from where I come from, but we are warriors on rugby fields, sporting fields, filming, visual arts, singing, dancing, legal fields, health fields, academia, and also prison. Yet, I come from a place where we are strong, fierce, and unwavering. I am a banyan tree of my own story, a matriarch of my legacy, tattooing my story on sacred lands, stolen lands where sovereignty was never ceded. My tattoos are part of me, and I am a part of my tattoos. Faced with discrimination, humiliation, victimization, and bullying to date, I wear these animosity as a badge of honor, weaving them into the tapestry of my skin and tattooing my heart with the pain it carries. So this is where I'm from. It's a small Polynesian island called Samoa in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And from here, for those who have actually seen Moana, the Disney channel, the Disney movie, part of my Samoa is in that movie. So if you have not been to a paradise of heaven till you go to Samoa, that's what I tell all my friends. So I will share with you 3 stories from my TransHuman Saunter project. They are stories that highlight my highs and lows, the stories that shows my vulnerability and my emotional journey. So this is my first location in the geomap. It is called Weaving Awa. Awa means banyan tree in Samoan. This tattoo here is the awa or banyan tree. This is the symbol of my parents who have weaved the Samoa or the Samoan way into me and my siblings. I am not sure when the Polynesian banyan tree arrived in Samoa from India, but it is a tree that provides shelter for small animals and insects, shade for the sun from the sun, and canopies are homes to various birds in Samoa. So this is a tree that is located on my first location at the Brisbane Botanical Gardens. These lands is a place of hope, dreams and opportunities, and a typical Samoan family's beliefs in these ideals. These dreams are visualized in the banyan tree, the lands in which she stands tall, and she can ingrain her roots into these foreign lands where her legacy lives on. I have tattooed and weaved my own legacy on these lands. My story is told through my tattoos that have been engraved on my skin, and my footprints are embedded on sacred lands as an alien, a migrant, and a foreigner. When I do return back home to Samoa, I leave behind memories of my tattoos within those who were willing to listen, willing to hear, willing to see, willing to feel, willing to experience my story about my struggles and tribulations. So my question is to the audience is this: do you belong in the space in which you reside in right now? Are you an insider, an outsider, or an in-betweener? If we go to the mirror box in there, I want you to write down who you are and what you think of the space in which you live in. I'll start. Thank you for that. So this is my second location on our geo map. This is called Weaving Fitu on the map of this location, and this is about the matriarch of my family, who is my grandmother, a loving grandmother, a strong grandmother, and a fierce grandmother. Tattoo on my hand is a symbol of a star, or Fitu, and my grandmother is the matriarch of our family. You see, she is our banyan tree. It is strong, fierce, and unwavering, and the nooks and crooks of her curves gave life. It nurtures villages of plants and insects. Her roots are forever weaving her ways into the depths of the earth, finding new grounds to tattoo her story and legacy. This is our grandmother. Her curves gave life. Her branching arms nurtured life. Her roots weaved deep into the depths of our hearts, so we will never forget who we are. So one day, we may become Banyans of our own families, matriarchs of our own space. Her teachings are tattooed in our hearts, so we may become Fitus, or guiding stars for our family. A matriarch, our banyan tree, our home, whose legacy was tattooed into sacred lands here in Brisbane, passed away quietly in our home at the tender age of 78. Good night. Good night. Good night. I encourage you to go back to the mirror board and answer the question in there. Who does the banyan tree remind you of in your life, either current or past? weaving Tapo location. Tapo means young maiden or just short maiden in Samoan. She performs a taolunga, which is the final dance of any Samoan performances. I chose this location because I used to sit here and ponder over my choreography for a Samoan dance for weddings, birthdays, and special occasions. These chairs, if they can talk, they will tell you all my frustrations, embarrassing moments, and sad moments. My story is tattooed on these chairs. The earth that surrounds it, the concrete walkways, the air, the trees nearby, the leaves overhanging the chair, and the view right in front of you. Like this tattoo here represents my family and the women who have danced the Siva Samoa with respect and class. These symbols are ancient, that will live on from one generation to another. The designs may change and vary, but the story remains the same. I would find a banyan tree and I'll sit under and nature watch as the birds take flights into the open skies, the insects crawling around the roots of the banyan tree, the plants on ground dancing freely and ruthlessly, sometimes with the wind, and the banyan tree canopies will sway gracefully with the wind, not caring about the lovers who are around her roots, tattooing their initials on her roots. Lovers breaking up, making up and meeting in secret. She is too classy to notice as she dances with the wind's seductive songs, the wind songs with no words but a and a shh. I am inspired. I see my story and I dance my story, calling out to my secret lover to meet me, dancing to him to come to me, showing off my curves and smiling. I am the taupo, the banyan tree canopy, graceful, classy, and free. And this is a snippet of my taupo and her dance.
To the symphony of nature. Classy. Dancing a traditional Samoan dance.
Do you have a tattoo? And if so,
of nature.
would you like to share it with us on Miro board or even on
Dancing a
chat?
traditional Samoan dance to the symphony of nature. Classy. Dancing a traditional Samoan dance to the symphony of nature. Classy. Dancing a traditional Samoan dance to the symphony of nature. Classy.
That is a snippet of me, a banyan tree, an alien, a migrant, a foreigner, whose legacies are tattooed and weaved into Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island lands that are sacred to our First Nations, the land in which my family has built a home and tattooed our heritage into the tapestry of Brisbane's landscapes. When you leave, reflect on your own story and how you have weaved your stories into the lands in which you currently call home. Ia Manuel Po, Ole Oa.
ปลูกต้นไม้ ปลูกชีวิต
Ole Oa.
ปลูกต้นไม้ ปลูกชีวิต
Ole Oa.
ปลูกต้นไม้ ปลูกชีวิต
Ole Oa.
ปลูกต้นไม้ ปลูกชีวิต About me, I call this project design as the journey home. It represents my thought, journey, and experience I have explored and learned while I am in Australia. As a foreigner living in Australia, using a different language, having a different belief, and experiencing the different culture, I think I owe this to my roots. In my culture and country, trees are considered sacred. Trees do not only give life, but they also attach to our spiritual journey. There is a chanting that we just said in Thai called ปลูกต้นไม้ ปลูกชีวิต meaning plant a tree, plant life. This quote represents how we human can live, balance, and sustain the world with sustaining the nature. So travel to Brisbane City Botanical Garden with me. Everything I was, I carry with me. Every thought I have, I present it to you. Every knowledge I learn, I will share it too. Talking about Banyan tree, who gonna believe that in Thailand we have a famous Banyan tree in our country? So what do you feel with this Buddha head in the Banyan tree root? This Banyan tree is located in Mahathat Temple in Ayutthaya city. It had a Buddha head growing amongst the roots of the Banyan tree. Its origins back in the 18th century when the city itself was razed to the ground during war. At that time, the city was left broken and abandoned, but was brought back to life in 20th century. So I was astonishing to see how the Banyan roots tangle with the Buddha head for more than 100 years. On top of that, through the spiritual and magical religious belief among Thais toward the Banyan tree, the tree itself is considered as a home of guardian spirit. So rather cut them down, some people will pay respect, present offerings, or establish a shrine at the root of the tree. Same in this picture, it presents the integrations of belief, culture, and way of life. And this is the beginning of the root in this journey, where I believe that there is a parallel relationship between Buddhism, spiritual traditions, and ecological system. I would say that this design will bring you to the middle of somewhere, of something. Some thoughts along the walk in Brisbane City Botanic Garden. It's the memory and experience that we're gonna collect along the way. Some might be confusions of the cells and sense of separations to the earth. Some might revive the spiritual belief toward the nature. And hopefully we can finally find a way to sustain our home, our world together. I decide the journey. Each step will encourage the users to explore the place and exchange the thoughts along the way with my stories. And today I will give a couple examples of my journey creations. First, we start with the 3 A's, the journey home, self-disclosure of this journey. And from what you have seen right now is the Albert Street entrance gate to Brisbane City Botanic Garden. Here at the 3A self-disclosure journey, I disclose my self-identity as a foreigner in Australia, but a citizen to the earth. I acknowledge the growth, adversity, and spirituality that can respond to the earth. And now we're entering. And not very far from the start, there is a next journey. It's called the beginning and the end. So what you expect to see the beginning and the end in this story? What you see right now is a standing strong tree that witnessed the human experience all from the beginning. This place looks serene, humid, and spacious. But what the tree had witnessed is all from the beginnings is the mess, and maybe the forthcoming ecological world crisis. Today, to live a bigger life, you got to make the money first, and that what human want, and that what human asks from the earth, and that's a mess. Every year we lost 1 million species to deforestation. When trees are taken down in the forest, the ecosystem change. As the species struggle to survive, and the local humidity and climate will change. Professor David Roy, an American scholar in Japanese Zen Buddhism, once explained that there are a profound roles and parallel between our self-understanding of sense of separateness to the world and the relationship to the earth. He said that the ecological crisis is no longer only political, technological, or economical crisis, but there is a sense that there is also a spiritual crisis as human nature relationship. Are we feeling that we are a pride of the earth collections? Or we are the exotic one? Are we healing? Or we taking right now? Both bounce back. Same in the scientific knowledge. It is known that human activities have an impact on ecosystem. Human and all other living beings are dependent on the natural ecosystem service to survive. In order to sustain and maintain our living conditions, it is important that we preserve natural ecosystem. So, if you were asked, what are your speculations of yourself that you can carry in the world in the 50 years? Are you going to be a pride collections of the earth, or you think it's going to be a mess? So please join me in Discord to choose, do you think in 50 years, this world, do you speculate it's going to be a mess, or it's going to be a pride collection of the earth? In both Miro and in the chat. Okay, I hope we find ourselves as a pride collections, but as now we know that we facing a lot of ecological crisis. So let's see what we can do about this. But before move on to the solutions, I will talk to you about the next journey. It's called the invasions. And this journey is present in the middle of the walkway of the Banyan lawn. From these locations, you will be able to see land, river, air, and concrete building. The questions I ask myself and about to ask you is, who is the world in weather? My question is simple. Is this us humans? Is this us who separate ourselves from the world and the rest of the living species? Nobody gonna help the tree right now. They are too busy helping themselves. And spiritual stories and belief to sustain the world are left behind. Is this because the world we are living, we are taught to be civilized? The consumerism promotes desire and dissatisfactions, and we seek for it. We now hunting trees, concreting the jungle, and claim it art. We forget, ignore to sustain the purest part. I recall the thoughts of the spiritual traditions and cultural belief to respond to the ecological crisis. This response can overcome the self-separations of the earth, that we become part of the earth. It emphasizes others that we are equally important. We should not invade, we should congregate. We invade the earth, so we should congregate the fresh air. In terms of the ecological concern, humanity produces more than thousands of carbon every minute. This burden our atmosphere balance of the greenhouse gas. However, tree helps cleanse the air by reducing level of carbon and removing pollutants while releasing oxygen through photosynthesis. The question is how we can help while we struggle to live and to be healed. Let's find out at the next journey on the way. In the next journey, I present a combination of Buddhism and related spiritual traditions as a possible ecological solution for deforestation. I call this journey the secret of life. So for you, are you consider the trees, especially a banyan tree, as a secret resource for a scientific knowledge to sustain the earth? Or you consider the trees as a secret to respect and sustain your life and your community system? So where are you coming from in your culture or in your country? How do you consider the tree? Please answer me in Discord or in the chat, please. A response of Buddhism and spiritual traditions in Thailand to deforestation root from Buddhist philosophy. So this is our response that relate to our spiritual traditions as we seeing the tree as sacred. So in our country, it is believed that the root cause of suffering are greed, ignorance, and hatred. These factors cause selfishness in humans to seek for the benefits from the natural resources. There is no doubt that deforestation is one of them. So in Thailand, Monks have used the positions to add a unique moral aspect to environmental movement. They initiated 3 ordinations, which has gained a media attention around the world for its inspiring message about the sanctity of the natural world. They believe it's their duty to protect and sustain the trees, especially a large old tree, as the balance of the world. So we human, what we do on Earth can burden our ecosystem. And we human, we sometimes forgot that we are connected to each other and to the nature through the spirits of the tree and through the spirits of the forest. From my perspective, tree witnesses all, and it may try to tell us something. We live in a world full of complexity that we demand and we command a lot from something or someone else. Maybe we should listen and consider the power of our culture, local culture, spiritual belief that might guide us to address the social issue, such as environmental problems and so on. I hope my journey design and experience will support the positive or desired imagination for the future in some way. And hopefully you guys can all take away some interesting insight from our journey. And tomorrow, please stay tuned for our artist works. It's an amazing work as well from Natasha and Lan. They will be presenting their journey tomorrow.
I'm on mute. Kavita is our project and producer who is a PhD student here at QUT. She is the powerhouse, the banyan tree of our project. And if you wish to discuss your experiences further, please feel free to get in touch with her. She is an amazing soul.
ปลูกต้นไม้ปลูกชีวิต
Olewa,
ปลูกต้นไม้ปลูกชีวิต
olewa,
ปลูกต้นไม้ปลูกชีวิต
olewa. The floor is all yours. Questions and questions, please.
Yes, please feel free to ask any questions, both in the chat and also, of course, if you unmute yourself and speak to the camera, that would be much nicer. But then maybe I can go with one question that I would be very interested in is about the seed. We talk so much about trees. What was the seed of this project? How did it begin?
It will begin. It came across when we were just starting off our projects, and then there was a call out. And that call out was an invitation to talk about the TransHuman Saunter and also talk about how the banyan tree relates back to us. So we looked at the banyan tree and we saw the banyan tree as for us to advocate for the banyan tree, advocate for the injustice that we're going through, advocate for the climate change, you know, the discrimination, the humiliation, the victimization, but also see it as more of hope and rituals. And also see it as a place of, there is some sense of poetic sense to the tree. And as the tree represents who we are as human beings, taking advantage of something that was there way before we even came about. So that's my take as to why I decided to take it on, because I believed in this, in the project, and I believed in what it stands for. But my take on it was much more of, I took it from a perspective of a colonization point of view, where the tattooing for us was forced to be, what do you call it? Well, when the colonizers came to Samoa, they wanted tattooing to stop because it was a pagan kind of, or heathen kind of religion that they don't believe in. So I saw it from that point of view, and I used the banyan tree as a way of, no, this is who we are. We're tattooing our stories on, like, we as people are tattooing our stories on those banyan trees by engraving it. but then those stories are also tattooed on our people. So not only we're tattooing stories on trees, but tattoos are also engraved in our skin. So that's how I went about coming around to really taking part in this project. But that's my perspective on why I took on the project.
Ib, would you like to add anything?
I thought you were gonna answer.
Yeah, I thought if you wanted to say something, I can explain the genesis of the project.
Yeah,
But if you
can
want to
continue, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so I guess this project is also based on my own personal story of, you know, having migrated to different countries for different reasons, education, for example, you know, mostly education, and then landing up here in Brisbane to actually do a PhD. And I think when I first landed here, the most when we would attend any session, any formal session at university, there was always acknowledgement of country. And there was never any explanation about what that acknowledgement of country actually meant. And as we go around, so QUT, where the university that we all study at is sitting on really prime land in the center of the city. And right next to it is the Botanic Gardens, where this project has become like where it has become like a playground for this project. And basically, as I go through the campus, there was no indication about what, any relation to there was very little reference to actually indigenous people, First Nations people out here. But there was a lot of acknowledgement of country, but very little explanation about what that actually means. And of course, I've spent like a year now, 2 years, and it has very deep meaning and connotations, but the land that carries their stories, is not really represented in any way. What we do have is the story from the perspective of white Australia and how white Australia was formed, for example. So I guess that was kind of the genesis of this project, having that perspective of having, many of us migrate here to study without really understanding history, but also with little access to that history. And then what would it take to actually begin to embed histories onto this project? And hence we went towards geolocative storytelling. And this project was formed with the idea that people similar to me, with similar experiences, similar lived experiences, because I have a strong connection to the banyan tree coming from India, for example, and it features in my first prototype of my PhD. So using the banyan tree as sort of a metaphor, it began to become a metaphor, and that's where I would say the roots of the project start. But then as we went through different grounds and trying to get grants for the project, the project metamorphosed into it started with personal history of one person, and then it grew into a project with 4 other people. And so that explains the 4 artists, and that explains the 4 very talented artists in this project who have come on board to like work with me very patiently, I would say. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting. The thing is, when I was listening to your talk and when I was looking at the banyan tree, and before when we were making the program for the festival, etc., I thought the metaphor is so beautiful because the banyan tree already looks like a tree of trees, entangled, like made of many. So in a sense, it also felt like you were trying to build a banyan tree with the story that each one of you was bringing. Now I wonder, and here comes the question, I wonder how you have seen those stories coming together with each other, or whether that has happened or not. Because in the presentation, for example, today, I felt like, okay, come with my walk, this is my walk, and then come with my walk. I wonder if like the banyan tree, those walks also create entanglements and knots and.
Yeah, I think if you look at CG or map, you have two options basically. One is to randomly pick locations and experiences, and that gives you that extremely entangled perspective coming from 4 artists. And I've been very closely involved, so there's also like a lot of me in there, but it's primarily the 4 artists. So you can have that kind of experience. You can click on them and go like, oh yeah, all right, different perspectives.
Yeah.
The other option is that you actually do one artist at a time, which is where there's an overarching narrative in each of their works. So they're individual, but you could also have this entangled experience.
Yeah, but I was wondering more in terms of how each one of the artists in the process of bringing their story found in the other stories something that moved their story forward. Do you know
that's a question for the artists. I'm gonna tap Natasha, Agapetos, Abe, like go for it.
So with mine was mainly, I was looking at my tattoos, and I'm one of those rebels, all right? I'm one of those rebels who used to like carve my initials on trees, tattoos, like my little initials on tattoo trees. So when I actually went through this, I looked at my stories of my tattoos, and I was like, oh my God, this looks like something that I can work with. Like looking at the banyan tree, going around the botanical gardens and looking at every single different banyan trees and their cousins and their cousins' cousins and their cousins' uncles, mothers, and all that. And I was like, I was mesmerized by the shapes of him, the engravements and the nooks and crooks of it. And the reason why I was so mesmerized by it, because I sit near Natasha, and her and I share the same office, so that's our office space where she's at right now. I'm somewhere else. I'm in the other campus. And so her and I used to sit there and we used to share stories of when we were growing up, how the banyan tree affected her versus how it affected me. So with the, she will answer for herself shortly, but with me it was like much more of the climbing of the trees, using the tree as, in Samoa it's called the Polynesian banyan tree. So that tree for us is a spiritual tree, but to us it's a bad spirit kind of tree, so we don't go underneath it. But what we used to do as rebels, little kids that we are, like little Samoans that we are, we used to climb all the way to the edges, and we used to climb, like jump off it, and then there's usually a natural spring pool underneath the banyan tree or the ocean. So that was one of the fun times that we had, and it's one of the stories that I actually have in there. It should be my first story. The other thing we had were like we used to get hidings underneath those trees. We used to fight underneath those trees. And then when I was sharing my stories with Natasha, her and I are so similar to each other, but she's much more sacred in hers, but she'll explain it. Whereas mine was like, I had fights underneath those trees. Like I had childhood, all my childhood memories were underneath those trees. And those were all in Samoa. So when I came here, fighting was illegal, because if you get fight, you end up in prison. And I'm like, ain't nobody got time to go to jail, nobody got time for jail for these days. But it was much more of reflecting in the past, reflecting on my childhood and the freedom that I had, and using the banyan trees canopies as their freedom of just waving around, the freedom of just standing there while people had that freedom around the roots. I also looked at it, reflecting on what the future might be for me. Like how would the banyan tree is so fierce and strong. Will I be fierce and strong when I grow up? And I used to always ask these questions, and obviously Kavita and Natasha were my sounding board on this. And then sometimes I reflect on what can I do to make things better? Like, what am I doing? What differences can I make? And I'm hoping that my stories does reflect something to do with storytelling, something to do that we can use to preserve not only our stories, but also looking at the banyan tree as a way of empowering us to continue fighting for what we believe in, because it's a foreign tree that was brought here in Australia, and now it's become part of Brisbane's landscapes. So that's how my story is kind of like entangled with Natasha's story. So I'm going to swing it over to Natasha now. Or yours, girl.
Thank you so much. I think first and foremost, Thank you, everyone. I'm sort of pinching myself thinking, this conversation or the banyan tree, if I imagine the roots that are under the ground and they're going through the oceans all the way over to Prague and India and other places in the world. I mean, this is absolutely amazing. You know, I'm sitting in my lab here. I haven't moved. I'm not on a plane, and you know, it's wonderful. So thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for this engagement. Thank you for this conversation. Absolutely, you know, chuffed and very, very, very privileged. I think what you see here in the presentation is, of course, a presentation of it's a micro of everything, but the richness of the conversations that have occurred, which you cannot experience in half an hour. And they've been really digressive conversations, which is what I've found really, really relevant, because we all have our individual practices. But when we are working on this project, it's actually the banyan tree is something that is common, it's shared. But for the life of me, I had no idea that I'm from India, that you had banyan trees in Samoa, or what it means to learn in Vietnam, and how Ib would see it in Thailand. So it's actually been really good. And again, gender plays a part, I think, who we are as women and how we see the world. And also as migrants, I have this feeling that I'm floating on land. I love traveling, but I don't truly know where I belong. So the metaphor of the banyan tree on a land that can actually shift, but it's throwing down roots that are slowly becoming a part of the land. And it's creating this really huge presence, like an epic presence that will outlive me, that is already the banyan trees we looked at have been here for 150 years. So they came as migrants, but they've made this presence. And if I may say about the friendship, back in South Asia, a banyan tree is very rarely planted alone, because the very thought that something would just survive by itself, it's such a lonely existence, you know. So you would normally have, it's one of 5 sacred trees. You'd have a peepal tree or an imli tree or tamarind tree. They're beautiful, and often they would merge. And as you were saying, you would possibly see more than one tree, and they're planted at crossroads. So the idea of people coming from any direction or any philosophical chain of thought, and being able to find shelter under the boughs of the tree really welcomes conversation, really welcomes community and love and affection. And speaking for myself, I've actually learned so much as a woman, as an artist, as making work that's relevant, the idea of the Anthropocene and what is happening to the environment, what is currently happening in India. I mean, it's just really awful times. And where do I talk about any of this? I talk with my friends in the Banyan Tree Project, in the hope, as Ib was saying, that we you know, like both of them spoke from the heart today, their hearts, and also presented possible poetic solutions that we can, you know, mull over. It's not saying this is what we're going to do, but really just think about what we can do, you know, and we can, because the trees will outlive us. The project will go out, and it's absolutely amazing. And I am getting carried away, so I'll pass on to Ib. Thank you.
For me, the answer is like we have a brainstorming sessions that we talk about how we see the banyan trees as a female or a male. And that quite interesting, like, because all of us kind of see the banyan tree as a female, and that's the journey start from there. And then we kind of relate ourselves as a tree when we speak, like we talk and we present and we decide things in our stories as the tree can talk to us. So that is kind of main ideas that we like exchange our thoughts, what we see from the tree when we have a different cultural belief, or we have a different cultures and we speak in a different language. But the trees is to share a common experience, culture, and common thoughts that we share together. So I think you guys also have a shared thoughts about the tree in your country as well. And yeah, for us, I mean, we so connected to the banyan tree, and that's the reason why each one of our work really relate back to our homeland as well. Yeah, I hope that's answer your questions.
Yes, fantastic answer, actually. It made me think of another question that I wanted to ask you now that you brought this beautiful metaphor of is the banyan tree female or male? I would ask you, is the banyan tree an outsider, an insider, or an in-betweener?
It's an outsider who has become an insider, who is now, I believe, is now an in-betweener. Well, it depends on your perspective, but to me, I saw her as an outsider, living on sacred land, you know, as an alien, as a foreigner, as a migrant. There is still that sense of belonging, but there is no sense of home for her.
The banyan tree traditionally is Shiva with his hair, but it also could be Brahma. These are, you know, Vedic gods, and they talk about creativity and links. I always think of the banyan tree as a female with long braids of hair and nurturing, you know, in the nooks and crannies, you've got so much other ecological, you know, help to the world, and the bark is used medically or medicinally. However, if I may very respectfully say, these are human questions, whether it's male, female, in between. The banyan is beyond that. It's the bungad. It's a very sacred tree. It's epic. It's cosmic. It's beyond those divisions. It's a kalpa vriksha. The banyan itself is an incorrect term. A kalpa vriksha, where kalpa actually refers to time, but not a year, not 100 years. It refers to aeons of time, incomprehensible time, and a tree that can last it. So the metaphor is actually beyond, and it includes not just humans, but other plants, and whoever takes shelter under it, and all the animals and its roots, and the scale of it is such a strong metaphor. I find it really humbling. And the proportion of the human standing next to a tree, infinitely small.
So, Natasha, what you mean is that in a sense we cannot try to apply categories of belonging to place to the banyan tree.
I missed part of that. I heard belonging to place. I'm so sorry I missed the previous part, Enrique.
No, if I wonder, because I'm trying to think through what you said, or with what you said, and in a sense, you see the banyan tree as transcending the category of belonging to a place.
Aha. Thank you so much, Enrique. And by the way, I love your questions because they're really, you know, they are allowing us to think and reflect even more on the projects. I truly appreciate them. The banyan tree makes the place, you know, because of its presence and what it can do. The seed is so small, probably the size of the, you know, the people of my eye, but what can happen from it? There is such hope in that tree that it stands. It becomes a metaphor for me as a migrant, for instance, that, you know, we arrive in a land that wasn't our own, and we come with peace, and we build our lives with peace, and we reach out, we make new friends. So in the Brisbane Botanical Garden, the banyan is not with any of its traditional friends. It has come and made new friends who have been planted next to it for 150 years. So it's placemaking that is so different. It is really adaptable and makes a presence. You know, I think, does that answer the question? Does it sort of help with?
I mean, I'm just trying. Yeah. I love that way of thinking about it, that the tree is actually making the place. It's not that the place was there before the tree came, but the tree actually creates the place as it grows.
Well, with respect, the banyan, when it was introduced, has also taken place. So it has actually, in a sense, for the indigenous trees, for want of a better word, it has become an invasive entity. However, it didn't choose to be there. It was brought there, planted there to see if it would survive in this climate and go on. But I think that in my project, I've actually then not just focused on the banyan, I've also looked at the other old trees that are around it and how it is actually interrelational, how things exist in a community. So I'm trying to think of placemaking with trees as a community building together as well. It has altered place because of the physical, presence, the very strong presence that all of those trees have here. And I, in my time, don't know any different, but I wasn't here 200 years back when the trees were not there. So, so it's quite an interesting question in itself, with layers of time and how things change. But it is, and even as a little bonsai, it can make a place, it carries a, well, I also then ask, what do we mean by place? We carry places within our bodies. We travel to places. We may be in one place and thinking of another place. So that's
what I'm trying to get at. If we now go full entanglement here, is why the banyan tree? In a sense, this is what I'm trying to think. Why? What does the banyan tree, as a non-human species, made you all come together and kind of feel this attraction? Was it a matter of place, of origin? Was it a matter of a kind of closeness to its status in some historical way? Was it about feeling, about the way you all felt under the tree that suddenly brought you together, and you thought, that I'm trying to navigate your connection to the banyan tree,
Yeah, I guess for me,
sorry.
Sorry, Kavita? You're gonna go?
Yeah, I think like on a practical level, the project came, like this project around the banyan tree came together, I guess, because of my PhD. It sprung from there, like on a practical level. But I guess from a philosophical level, what brought us all together is that the banyan tree is all present in each of our cultures, and each of our countries. Forget culture. In each of our countries, and the banyan tree is also called the Great Indian Banyan Tree. So it very dominantly takes that name, that it comes from India, but it has presence in all these countries for different reasons, and it has traveled. And then it ties back to our own experience of coming from a different tree, coming from a different country and coming here. So I guess that is where we're all entangled, but we're all entangled for like various different reasons, I would say. Each of us taking a different line of thought, but the umbrella is our connection to the Indian banyan tree. And also I really, what I really find interesting about the banyan tree, to me, it is a place. The way the tree grows, the way from the time it grows, it's a strangle of fig. It kills another plant to survive. And once it does that, it does not allow any, there are very few plants that can actually exist under it. So it's sort of like in its own way creates a colony of its own. And then so this being that is, this non-human being without consent or consent of its own has come all the way out here, whereas the four of us have probably come here for different reasons. But, like this being has come, it's come here, it's made a home, it's taken, and to a certain level, native plants probably can't grow under it, or but it coexists because it creates homes for other reasons. And when you go to the banyan tree, which you can see very beautifully in everyone's work, but there's the exploration of place that it creates a home. And I personally feel very scared to like go near it, because I feel like that tree can swallow me up. That's what I feel like. One day it'll wake up and eat me up, just because of the way the aerial roots are constructed, the way the tree is supported, everything that goes through it. There could be, it supports other life, so to speak. So yeah, I think like there's a lot of cultural connotation with that tree for each of us. And that became sort of the beginning, I would say, the beginning of what brought us together. But then obviously everyone's taken a different route of expressing that. Yeah.
Because I took on that project because I really love the topic of it. But the other reason I took it on was because I'm also doing a PhD, but my PhD is, you just all saw was my tattoos. That's my whole entire PhD. based on my tattoos. But I loved it because I used it as an opportunity to test some of my ideas that I'm using for my PhD as well, as a filmmaker and as a storyteller. And using the banyan tree has actually given me a sense of resilience against the animosity that I'm going through, and sort of like, and challenge myself as well. And what I learned about the banyan tree, I had no idea the aoa in Samoa was actually the banyan tree until I took on this project. The second thing is I've never done a project on Sea Geomap. It's frustrating, I'm telling you, but it's absolutely amazing. But it's first timers. I took it because it's all firsts for me. It was my first Geomap arts project. First time I've actually spoken about myself, you know, putting myself out there. First time putting my home videos out in public. First time talking about my trials and tribulations. First time talking about my body shape. You know, first time talking about things that I never tell nobody. And I got the opportunity to actually showcase that. So that's the reason why I took it on as well, was much more of testing how tough I am to take on a PhD. So it's much more challenge, not only to myself personally, but also on a professional level. But I love the idea of the banyan tree because I realized that the banyan trees in Samoa has lived longer than 3 generations of my family. You know, and 3 generations of my family has seen that grow, have heard my ancestors cry, have witnessed my ancestors, what do you call it, challenges in life, seen the colonizers come through and just take away our lands, you know, by force. And we're grateful that we still have what we have now. So that's the reason why I loved the idea of the banyan tree, was purely because she witnessed generations before me and now witnessing my story, and I'm wondering how many stories after me that she's going to witness, not only here in Australia but also when I go back home. So that's my reasons. All right, that's my proof. Ip, do you have anything to add in?
Yeah, for me, it's more like an experiment and exploration, because what I did in the project, I would not be able to do it in Thailand. It's the context is different. Like if you see it through the Thai glaze, they will all feel the same. But when you are in a different country, speaking in a different language, and what you see is the natural ecosystem in the botanic garden, and you see the birds, ants, other animal and other species around the banyan tree, and it's made me feel strange in the first place. And I think I owe that to my culture, to my country. So I feel like I need to explain and explore my thoughts and share it to everybody, that it's working together between the scientific knowledge and the traditional spiritual experience. It's kind of working it together to sustain the world and to design the world together. So the banyan tree, it's kind of a chain of the living system, and in my country is the chain of the living culture as well. So that's why this project is meaningful to us, and especially for me to explore my thoughts and explore my cultural identity, cultural orientation as well. Yeah, hope that answers your questions.
Yeah, I could just add, oh, sorry, go Natasha, I can go after you.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that the idea of working, I mean, on a very practical level, there are many banyan trees here, many in the botanical gardens, and in both Queensland University of Technology campuses. We have other fig trees that also come in the same family. And I, as an artist, have always wanted to, I've lived over 30 years in Australia, but I've always wanted to create a sense of how does the local come into my artwork? How do I create this cyclic engagement with my actual where I live, but how can it become a portal for much else? Not just for my heritage, but the state of the world now. So I think it came as a wonderful combined opportunity of creating new knowledge which addresses the problems that we are experiencing socially and ecologically in our time. And the idea that knowledge is made from multiple streams coming together, just as the banyan has multiple roots everywhere, and that it's constantly forming, it's not set, it's questioning our understanding of the world. It therefore allowed for me to not just be limited by my views and my knowledge and the limit of what I can do, and even the fact that it's going out and becoming part of your festival, it's actually creating more thought, and it's dynamic, as is a growing tree. And we see it every day, so we can revisit it and reflect on the questions and what are we doing, what is our place in the world, how are we, who is an artist, why be an artist, what is the conversation, is it impactful, what can we do, and we are doing it together, we're not alone.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
just one thing
sorry.
to add to what everyone's saying, and they all kind of said it like in really different ways. I think like the one book that I found on the banyan tree, it's called, I think, The Wasp and the Fig, and that was written by a white man. And I think one of my biggest motives with this project is about knowledge creation, and that different kinds of knowledge, different ways of seeing the world begin to come out in this project, through this project. And I sort of feel weird that I have to keep justifying why the banyan tree, So so I think one of the biggest intent with this project, because this project, I think somewhere in January was almost died. It was almost killed for, it was a super traumatic time in January. And, but the big motivation with this was to deal with knowledge creation, was to make sure people who tell their stories are actually the people who own the stories. They are the ones who are sharing their knowledge. They have every right, whatever it is, the copyright or whatever it is, to their own work. It goes to the broader conversation around citation politics as well. But that's a discussion for another day. But yeah.
It can be a discussion for tomorrow, if that's okay. Because we have another,
sure.
TransHuman Saunter.
Yeah, we do. We do have another one tomorrow, which will be quite different to this one. Yeah.
Okay. So, well, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for having us.
This wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes, it was fantastic. I really had a lot of fun. I learned so much, and and I hope the audience also felt this way. That I'm sure. So in any case, I still have some questions, but let's take them tomorrow, perhaps after the second Saunter, which I'm really looking forward to.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Really beautiful.
I'm sure it had fun, because I did. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.